That night, Emily Carter was thrown out of her home into a brutal snowstorm in Boston. But what no one knew was that hidden inside her coat pocket was a secret powerful enough to destroy the entire Carter family. Ryan Carter, the husband she had shared 20 years of marriage with, hurled her suitcase into the snow and pointed toward the front gate. "You abandoned my father. Get out." From behind their brightly lit windows, the neighbors watched Emily with judgment in their eyes. No one knew what had happened inside that house, and no one understood why she didn't say a single word in her own defense. Because at that moment, protecting her reputation was no longer what mattered most. Inside her pocket was an old key, and with it, the last words Robert had whispered before taking his final breath. "Don't let him know. You're the only one I trust." Why would a father trust his daughter-in-law more than his own son? What had Robert discovered that was so dangerous he kept it hidden until his dying moment? And what did the secret behind that old key have to do with Emily being thrown out into the snow that very night? Emily's hands trembled from the bitter cold as she slid the old key into the safe deposit box at the bank. The heavy steel door clicked open. She held her breath. There was no cash, no gold, not even a single property document, as she had expected. Inside were only 3 items: a black leather journal, a USB flash drive, and an unsealed yellow envelope. Emily frowned. "What were you hiding, Dad?" she whispered. She reached for the journal first. The moment she opened the first page, her heart nearly stopped. Robert's familiar handwriting stared back at her. "If you're reading this, it means Ryan has already made his move." Emily staggered back a step. "That's impossible." Robert had written those words months before he died. She kept turning the pages. With every page she read, the color drained from her face. This wasn't a journal recording the past. Every entry was dated with events that hadn't happened yet. Predictions, warnings, incidents that were still in the future when Robert wrote them. And the most terrifying part, every single one of them was unfolding exactly as he had described. Emily tightened her grip on the journal. How could you possibly have known? Then she turned to the next page. The words froze her in place. "Ryan will try to force you out of the house. When that happens, don't argue with him. Go to the safe deposit box." A chill ran down Emily's spine. Robert hadn't simply anticipated the betrayal. He had known exactly when it would begin. But what had made him so certain? And perhaps the answer was waiting inside the USB drive he had left behind. The moment she left the bank, Emily headed straight to her attorney's office to check the status of her assets. She still believed that even if Ryan had thrown her out of the house, the land she had inherited from her family would still be safe. But within minutes, that belief shattered. Her attorney placed a thick file on the desk. He looked at her with quiet sympathy. "Emily, you need to prepare yourself." She began flipping through the documents. Her heart pounded. Every parcel of land, every property that had belonged to her family's estate had been transferred. The transactions were complete, legal. "That's impossible." Emily shot to her feet. "There has to be some mistake." The attorney slid another document toward her. "This signature is yours." Emily looked down. Her breath caught in her throat. It was her signature. Every stroke, every curve, an exact match. "But I've never signed anything to sell my property." Her voice trembled. The attorney remained silent for a moment before opening another file. "Ryan didn't forge your signature. He used a legally executed power of attorney that you signed 6 months ago." Emily felt the blood drain from her body. 6 months ago. A memory suddenly flashed through her mind. The hospital. Robert was undergoing treatment. Ryan had handed her a stack of papers. "They're just Dad's health insurance forms. Can you sign them for me?" Back then, she hadn't questioned a thing. She signed them, without reading them carefully, without checking what they actually were. Emily buried her face in her hands. "No, this can't be happening." How could a set of medical insurance papers become the legal tool that transferred every piece of property she owned? And if Ryan had been setting this up 6 months earlier, then when had his real plan actually begun? Emily returned to the small apartment she had rented temporarily, her mind in complete turmoil. Outside, the snow continued to fall in thick, relentless sheets. Inside the cramped room, she placed Robert's journal on the table and turned to the next few pages. The more she read, The more her hands began to shake. Every page was carefully dated. Beside each date were short, precise notes. Ryan persuades Emily to sign documents at the hospital. Ryan says the paperwork is urgent. Emily doesn't read the documents. Phase 1 complete. Emily froze. No. She hurried through more pages. The same kind of entries appeared again and again. Each one described a different situation. Sometimes it was treatment paperwork. Sometimes it was forms for elderly care. Other times it was legal documents disguised as paperwork meant to help Robert. The old man had documented every single incident, one after another, as though he had been watching a carefully orchestrated plan unfold right before his eyes. A chill ran down Emily's spine. You knew? All of it? At the bottom of one page, Robert had written, "She trusts people too easily, and Ryan knows it." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. It wasn't just her signature that had been exploited. It was her trust. Without wasting another second, she plugged the USB drive into her laptop. A hidden surveillance video appeared on the screen. Ryan was sitting inside an office. His voice came through loud and clear. "All she has to do is sign once, and everything will belong to us." Emily gripped the arms of her chair so tightly her knuckles turned white. She waited for the other man in the room to speak. At first, she assumed it was Ryan's attorney. But when the man turned toward the hidden camera, she nearly forgot how to breathe. It wasn't a lawyer. It was Michael, Ryan's older brother. Michael smiled coldly. "After all these years, it's finally time to take back what belongs to us." Emily sat frozen in shock. Take back? What did he mean? Take back? How long had the two brothers been working together? And what had happened in the past that made this family willing to carry out a plan that had taken years to unfold? Emily didn't wait another moment. The very next morning, she walked straight back into the house she had been thrown out of. Ryan was sitting in the living room, calm, almost as if he'd been expecting her. Emily slammed the stack of documents onto the coffee table. "Explain this." Ryan glanced at the papers before letting out a quiet laugh. "No panic. No denial. You signed them." He leaned back in his chair. End of story. His cold response left Emily speechless. "You tricked me." "No." Ryan shrugged. "I simply took advantage of what you willingly gave me." Emily clenched her fists. Just then, another voice broke the silence. "Ryan's right." Her mother-in-law stepped out from the hallway. The expression on her face was unnervingly calm. Emily turned toward her. "You knew about this too?" The older woman didn't answer immediately. She looked Emily straight in the eyes. Then, in a steady voice, she said, "That property was never yours to begin with." The room fell completely silent. Emily stood frozen. "What do you mean?" Her mother-in-law took another step forward. "Your family never legally owned that land." Emily felt the room begin to spin. "That's impossible. My grandfather left that land to us." "That's the story you've always been told," the woman replied coolly. "But it isn't the truth." Ryan remained silent. He didn't object. He didn't deny it, as if he had known this story for years. Emily looked from one face to the other. Only one question echoed in her mind. If what her mother-in-law was saying was true, if her family had never legally owned that property, then why had Ryan and his entire family spent years plotting to take it? Were they really trying to steal her inheritance? Or were they fighting to reclaim something they believed had always belonged to them? Emily's hands were still trembling as she held the last envelope Robert had left behind. For days, she had read his journal, watched the hidden recordings, pieced together every fragment of the scheme Ryan had kept hidden. But something deep inside told her that the biggest secret was still sealed inside this envelope. Emily took a deep breath and opened it. A thick stack of documents slid into her hands. She turned to the first page. The moment she read the title, she froze. Last Will and Testament. Robert's final legally executed will. Emily hurried to the section naming the beneficiary. Then she stopped cold. This can't be right. Her voice was barely more than a whisper. There was only one heir listed, not Ryan, not her mother-in-law, but Emily Carter. Every asset, every share, every piece of property transferred to her, without conditions, without limitations, without being shared with anyone else. No. Ryan snatched the will from her hands. He read it once, then again, and again. The color slowly drained from his face. Impossible. He would never have done this. At that moment, the office door opened. A man walked inside. It was Emily's attorney. He set his briefcase on the table and spoke calmly. Robert signed and notarized this will months before his death. Ryan immediately objected. But all the property transfers have already been completed. The attorney looked him straight in the eye. That's exactly the problem. He pulled another file from his briefcase. This will become legally effective before any of the transfers you carried out. The room fell into stunned silence. Emily could feel her heart pounding against her chest. Then a terrifying realization struck her. If, at the time Ryan transferred those assets, the legal inheritance had already belonged to her, then the properties Ryan had sold, the assets he had transferred, everything he had taken over during all those months, who had they actually belonged to all along? The room remained buried in heavy silence after Robert's will was revealed. But the attorney wasn't finished. He opened his leather briefcase and placed another file on the table. There's one more thing everyone needs to know. Ryan frowned slightly. Emily glanced at the title on the folder and froze. DNA test results. The attorney slowly opened the file. Robert was not Ryan's biological father. No one spoke, not even Ryan. What shocked Emily even more was that he didn't look surprised. It was as if he had known all along. You knew? Emily asked. Ryan let out a bitter laugh, a laugh filled with exhaustion. For 10 years. Emily stared at him. 10 years? Ryan nodded. I had the DNA test done myself. No one lied to me. No one kept it from me. He lowered his gaze to the table. His expression turned cold. I've known for a long time that Robert wasn't my real father. Emily felt as though the ground beneath her was shifting. If you knew, why did you stay? Ryan lifted his eyes to meet hers. Because I wanted the truth. And after I found it, I wanted to take back what never belonged to them. The attorney frowned. Emily whispered, What are you talking about? Ryan slowly rose to his feet. For the first time since everything had begun, the calm mask he had been wearing disappeared. I spent my entire life in that house. I ran that family's business. I protected that family's wealth. Then one day I found out I never truly belonged there. He looked directly at Emily. His eyes burned with equal parts anger and heartbreak. Then who are you? Emily asked softly. Ryan answered without hesitation, the one who should have had everything. The room fell completely silent, but only one question echoed through Emily's mind. If Robert had known for years that Ryan wasn't his biological son, why had he kept him by his side until the very end? Emily plugged the USB drive into her computer one last time. The screen remained black for a few seconds. Then Robert appeared. He was sitting in the familiar chair in his home office. His face looked weary, but his eyes were sharp and completely alert. He looked straight into the camera, as if he were speaking directly to Ryan. Ryan, if you're watching this video, then everything has happened exactly as I expected. The room fell silent. Ryan's jaw tightened. Robert continued, I knew you would do this, and I let it happen. Emily froze. Even the attorney stood quietly, staring at the screen. Robert opened a file resting on the desk in front of him. Every legal document was prepared and protected in advance. Every transaction included legal verification clauses. If fraud or abuse of a power of attorney is ever discovered, every single transaction will automatically be declared null and void. Ryan lowered his head. A bitter smile slowly crossed his face, as though he finally understood everything. Robert delivered his final words. You didn't just steal the family's assets. You created the evidence that will be used against you. At that very moment, there was a knock at the door. 2 police officers stepped into the room. No one resisted. No one said a word. Ryan slowly rose to his feet. He looked at the screen one last time. Then he smiled, a strange smile. Not the smile of a defeated man, but the smile of someone who had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. So was this truly Ryan's downfall? Or was it the ending he had accepted the day he learned he had never really belonged to that family? 3 months later, Robert had been transferred to a high-end care facility outside Boston. The room was quiet. Afternoon sunlight poured through the window. Emily sat beside his hospital bed. Robert had grown much weaker. But when she took his hand, he still squeezed it gently, like a thank you, like a final trust that had never changed. Emily smiled for the first time in months. Meanwhile, Ryan stood before the court. All the evidence was clear. Fraudulent transactions, misused legal documents, long-term schemes carefully built over years. But what surprised everyone was that Ryan did not appeal. No defense, no request for leniency. He simply accepted the verdict in silence, as if this outcome had been waiting for him all along. When the trial ended, Emily walked out of the courthouse. She felt neither victory nor relief. Only Ryan's final words echoed in her mind, the one who should have had everything. And then a thought crossed her mind. Some people don't destroy families for money, but because they never truly felt like they belonged in them. If someone knew from the beginning that they were never part of that family, was their act of taking everything a crime or a distorted form of justice? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Do you stand with Emily or Ryan? And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next story filled with unexpected twists.